Okay, hello. All right. I think we are live. All right, somebody in the chat, let me know, can you hear me? Is the audio good on your end, or do I need to be louder or softer? All right, Brit Boy in the chat saying yes, the audio sounds fine. Is it too loud or too soft? Let's see. Boop doop boop boo. Connor Graves asks, are you from Minnesota? No, I am not from Minnesota. Yeah, no, not from Minnesota. All right, Tony's Cowboy Show, how's it going? Sounds great. It's pretty good and fantastic. It sounds great. All right, fantastic. Just gotta close down the survey anymore, right? The Casual Historian Audience Survey for 2020 is now officially closed. And that is going to be the main thing we're going to be doing in this live stream here. I finally figured out how to use OBS a little better. And, wait, what's that? Why the neck beard? There is no neck beard. No, it's just a grown out beard. That's all it is. Let's see. Connor Graves, you mentioned you were Lutheran. Sadly assumed you were from the land of 10,000 lakes. Nah, sorry, yeah, no. I'm from Central California. There's not a lot of Lutherans here. It just happened to be like the one of the few congregations out here. See, okay, well, if there's anybody who still wants to take the survey, it should be linked in the community tab right now. One of the recent posts in the channel community tab, it's still posted there. So if you want, I just reopened it so you can take the survey real quick. So how has everybody's holidays been? You know, your Christmas, your New Year, whatever holiday you do. Yeah. Jacob Barrett, California? Oh no. Yeah, I'm aware. I'm a native Californian. So, yeah. So, yeah. Zarno, have you ever looked at Hakim's video on the Holodomor? It's a lot of tanky propaganda, but I don't have enough knowledge to contest it. I have not seen Hakim's video on the Holodomor. But yeah, my video focus, or at least my series of videos, is going to be focusing a lot more on the denial of the Holodomor than the Holodomor itself. Sonny Graves, are you ELCA, Missouri Synod, or Wells? I am Missouri Synod. I'm a Missouri Synod Lutheran. Let's see here. All right, some people are still looking for that survey. See, short link. I'm posting a link to the survey. Yes, so back in late summer, early fall, I sent out a survey in one of my videos asking audience a bunch of questions in order to help me guide future content making in the coming year. And I finally got around to reviewing it, and I wanted to go over that. So I am about to post that survey in the chat so you guys can see it there, and I'll also try to put it in the description of this video. All right, it should be in the chat, the survey. I'll wait a few minutes before going over it. So, yeah. Okay, All right, Rocky asks, what do you think is the most likely outcome of the Georgia runoffs? Well, a month ago, I would have said it's most likely that the Republicans were going to win both seats. Right now, I am thinking it's most likely that the Republicans will win one of the seats. Purdue will get reelected, I think, and I think Lafler, whatever her name is going to lose to that preacher guy. That's probably what's going to happen. And so the Republicans will maintain a very slim majority in the Senate, which means Kamala Harris will not get to be the tie-breaking vote, which will then, of course, force the government to be either more moderate or nothing will happen. Those are the options. See, Connor Graves, come out to New Ulm, Minnesota. A lot of interesting history, especially the siege of New Ulm by the Dakota natives. Oh, well, I'll have to think about traveling more when traveling is allowed again. See, Jacob Barrett, are you hyped for the electoral count chaos tomorrow? I don't think it's going to be too much chaos. I think the situation is going to be more embarrassing than chaotic. That is my suspicion, is that it's just going to be more embarrassing for those who actually participate. And I don't think Pence will go along with it. Of course, that means that'll ruin his chance of ever, running for president, or at least running for president as a successor to the Trump legacy. Okay. All right, got about 18-ish viewers. Good. All right. All right, are there any more people interested in responding to the survey? See, Connor Graves, how's the COVID in California? See, well, funny story about COVID in California here. So on Christmas Eve, I got a call from my roommate who was out of town that day, and apparently one of the guys that my roommate writes music with, they have a little music writing business, and he spends a lot of time at his place. Well, the guy he writes music with tested positive for COVID. And since, my roommate spends a lot of time with him, which means he might have been exposed to COVID, he was exposed and may have had it. And since I spend time with the roommate, that means I might have been exposed to COVID. And so, since that happened on Christmas Eve, and we didn't want to risk my elderly family members getting sick, I was not able to visit my family in town on Christmas. So I haven't seen them since Christmas Eve. Luckily, he just got his results back yesterday that said that he tested negative for COVID, so chances are I am also clear. So, yeah. So, COVID's getting worse here in California right now, and honestly, I don't think the policies, like the lockdown policies, are going to do much good at this point. The lockdown policies were never more than just a temporary measure to slow it down at the beginning. And so now they serve less of a purpose, but people just still need to be careful. All right. Okay. I got a couple more responses to that. All right. Well, then let's talk about what I wanted to talk about today. So before we get into the audience survey, I want to tell you about some of the plans I have for this year. I mentioned them a bit in a post I put in the community tab, but for the coming year, at least for the foreseeable future, at least the first 3 to 6 months, videos on this channel will be uploaded on Tuesday mornings, around between 7 and 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you're on the East Coast, that'll be like somewhere between like 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. for you guys. And yeah, they're going to be videos. I'm hoping to get a video out every week, except for in January, because ad rates are terrible. and except for the first Tuesday of each month. The first Tuesday of each month, like today, I am going to be doing a live stream, allowing me to stay connected with you guys, and it also gives me an extra week to work on videos and get ahead of schedule. So there's that. And there are other things I'll be doing this year that you might be interested in. So I'm not sure how many of you saw, but how many of you guys watch Armchair History? How many of you guys watch The Armchair Historian? Well, you guys might know Armchair Historian has his own little streaming service called Armchair History TV. And he has recruited YouTubers to different history YouTubers to create content for Armchair History TV. Well, over the last few months, he and I talked, and I have been recruited to create original content for Armchair Historian, armchairhistorian.tv. And so, along with content on my personal channel, on the Casual Historian channel, you can also find some Casual Historian content on Armchair History TV. He's already got one from me. I sent him one a month or so ago. He's already commissioned a couple more. Don't know when those will be going up or if they'll be going up. But I know in the relaunch video he did, he mentioned Jedi was one of the new contributors in the relaunch video from a few weeks ago. And so I figure since he's already announced it, it's safe for me to tell you guys personally that yes, I now am part of the Armchair History TV content crew. So yeah, that's something I'll be doing. It's an extra source of income, and that's all very nice. There's also going to be some more sponsored videos in the coming year. Some people are annoyed by sponsors. Other people are just happy their favorite creators got them. I'm hoping people are in the latter category, but people are weird. So, yeah. In fact, I've already got more sponsors lined up for this year than I had all of last year, which is really cool. So, yeah, it's looking up to be a better year already. All right. So before we get to the survey, let a couple more people into the survey before we start looking at it. Let's see. Yep. And thoughts on Gavin Newsom? Gavin Newsom is just another. He's a hypocrite. He's a political hypocrite like a lot of other politicians. He's the people that makes it hard to take the lockdown order seriously. It's like, you guys can't meet with your families or go out to restaurants, but I can rent out an entire restaurant for myself and some lobbyists. Or I can go to a dinner with a bunch of lobbyists who have rented out a whole restaurant. Or Nancy Pelosi going to get her hair cut while, shaming others for not following the rules. Mm-hmm. Yo, Mitch Connor. Yo. All right. Well then, is there anybody else in the chat who's still looking at maybe filling out the survey? Hold on a sec. See, if there's no one else interested in filling out the survey, then I think I will start going over it. All right, let me change scenes here. And do. All right, gotta wait for that to catch up. And come on, YouTube, you can catch up with OBS, can't you? All right, I guess I'll answer a few questions while I'm waiting for the YouTube to catch up with OBS. Let's see here. All right, a couple of questions over on Patreon from BritBoy. See, how do you think the Georgia Senate election will turn out? Oh, I already answered that a little earlier. So, yeah, I think Perdue will probably win his election. It'll be close, but he'll win. And then I think that pastor guy will beat Loeffler, which will result in Republicans having 51 seats and Democrats having 49. And the other question asked by BritBoy over on Patreon, what do you think of Trump's call to the Georgia Secretary of State? It's bad, but at this point, it looks bad, but at this point, it's mostly just sad. You know, it's like goes out with a whimper. That is ultimately what's going on there. You know, it's like what started with a man going down a golden escalator ends in a whimper of just looking for any barely functioning excuse to try and win the election that he rightfully lost. So, that out of the way. Okay, some reason the OBS isn't showing up on the stream for my for the screenshot I have. Okay, so then I guess since that's not showing up, it's like, yeah, for some reason it is really odd. Okay then, well, let's just start, let's continue on with a few more questions. What questions do you guys have at the moment while I'm waiting for OBS to work? Let's see, Connor Graves, do you have any content on Native American history? I don't have any content on Native American history at my channel at the moment. I'm not against it. I just don't have anything in particular that I would really want to do. Let me see. All right. BritBoy, what's your IRL job? I work in an office that does distributes healthcare information. That is my job. Let's see. All right. Now, Quill and Ink History. Hello there. Who's your favorite history YouTuber? Oh, that's not fair to ask. That's not fair for a creator to ask another creator that, especially for this. Yeah, so I have to avoid that for the moment. Sorry, Quill and Ink, but I'm gonna have to. Hello there, Quill and Ink. Yeah, I'm gonna have to avoid that question because it's literally loaded in front of other history creators. Cypher's a great guy, you know. Great guy. Like the content, yeah. He's a good creator. Let's see. Rocky, favorite recent president, FDR to Trump. Okay, if it has to be someone from like between FDR and Donald Trump, man, don't have a lot of presidents I like there. I like the idea of Ronald Reagan, less the outcome, but more the idea of Ronald Reagan is what I like. See, Brit Boy, can you release your originals on Armchair History to Patreon? I don't know. See, I know part of the contract I signed, and I can't go into too much details. Of course, knows that I can't publish it anywhere else, so I don't know. Oh no, I'll talk to people about it, but I don't think so. I don't think I can do that at this time. But luckily, videos that are published to Armchair History TV are free to view for the public for the first week that they're up. And so if I get more... And so whenever one of my videos goes live on Armchair History TV, I'll definitely tell you guys about it, in which case you can watch it on there for free during the first week. At least that's my understanding of how the platform works. All right, Mitch Connor, what is your favorite alternative history book? I don't watch too much I don't read, or I should say, I don't read too much alternate history. I don't read too much alternate history myself, at least not anymore. It's like, I've read the Southern Victory series from Harry Turtledove, and that's about it. Yeah. I'm more interested in alternate history as like an intellectual exercise more than as a narrative format. So yeah, Connor Graves, here's a trivia question for you. What state has the most Lutherans? If I had to remember, it's either Minnesota or Montana. Since Minnesota has more people, I'm going to guess Minnesota probably has more Lutherans unless it's Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Minnesota, or Montana have the most Lutherans in them. It's one of those three. See, Dr. Conblog, not even Eisenhower, would expect someone of your politics would at least respect him. Yeah, I respect Eisenhower as a person. Well, it's a similar story to Reagan, but yeah, Eisenhower was very much a New Deal Republican, and I'm not a big fan of the New Deal. Then again, Reagan was also a New Dealer guy as well, but he sort of embraced the sort of Goldwater idea of conservatism. Let's see. Patrick Stump, have you ever considered doing something on the formation of Protestant denominations in the U.S.? Well, like I said, I've done that video on like the history of Lutherans in the U.S., but I haven't done I haven't really done any of the others because I don't have as much interest or as much firsthand knowledge of those ones. So, yeah. See, Connor Graves, South Dakota, I thought, but you are probably right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that would have to be my guess, at least for the one for sheer number. And I would not suspect South Dakota. I wouldn't suspect South Dakota to have the most just because it has a low population in general, whereas Minnesota has a larger population and Wisconsin also has a larger population, and Wisconsin has a lot of Germans there. So that's why I would suspect there's a lot more Lutherans there. JL, why do you dislike the New Deal? I dislike the New Deal because I feel like I see most of the programs from the New Deal as being unconstitutional. You know, it's a bunch of programs that our Constitution wasn't made to handle. And I feel like those have allowed the government to grow a lot more, you know? So the New Deal programs like your Social Security, all these other, there's a whole bunch of it. The Social Security, the New Deal programs are probably the biggest like impact on the U.S. federal government in the history of the country. Like, the New Deal is when we first saw federal intervention into the lives of individuals. So that's your Social Security, that's all these job protection boards, and those eventually led to the Great Society programs of the 1960s under Lyndon Johnson. And the Great Society programs have proven to, at best, to have not helped at all, and in some cases have made it worse. Like, there are a lot more, like, single-parent homes since the Johnson administration because the Great Society programs disincentivize couples staying together. Let's see. Aiden Prucker, do you like the alternate history channel What If Alt Hist? I haven't watched What If Alt Hist. I know of him. He's on the history Slack, but I don't watch his stuff. You know, I don't really watch very many alternate history YouTubers. I think it's like, yeah, Cody from Alternate History Hub is the only one I really watch. I'm aware of others, but most of them just tend to be very bland. You know, most of them tend to be very bland. So yeah, BritBoy, why is Social Security unconstitutional? It depends on your interpretation of the Constitution. I am a more strict constructionist, and so I believe that the federal government doesn't have powers, doesn't have the power to do something that it's not expressly given. And in the Constitution, there's nothing in the Constitution that explicitly gives the federal government the power to give money to individual people, or at least not in that kind of program. Kevin Clements, so couples in an abusive relationship should stay together. It's like, no, that's not what that had anything to do with at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's see, Rocky, would you think of Robert Taft? How would the U.S. be different if he had become president? Robert Taft, here's the thing. Robert Taft and Eisenhower are virtually the same. Like, there's this myth that, oh, Robert Taft was this arch conservative, but not really. Or at least he wasn't this arch conservative in a modern sense. It's like he didn't want to join NATO, but he was perfectly fine with like American expansive alliances in like East Asia. You know, like Robert Taft was the son of former president, you know, like William Howard Taft. And William Howard Taft had served as the military governor of the Philippines in the early Theodore Roosevelt administration. And so Robert Taft spent some time growing up, spent a little bit of his childhood in the Philippines, and grew an attachment for, you know, the peoples of the Philippines and East Asia in general. And so, although Robert Taft was against U.S. involvement in NATO, he perfectly supported U.S. involvement in like Taiwan and Korea. So I don't think he would have been too different from Eisenhower, since he also came in line with the New Deal just as Eisenhower did. So yeah. Let's see, BritBoy, how about UBI, Universal Basic Income? It depends on what kind of universal basic income you're thinking of, because the kind that was originally proposed by that was proposed and supported by like people such as Friedrich Hayek or even Richard Nixon, like a lot of people try to convince right-wingers or conservatives to go along with UBI because, they'll say, well, but Friedrich Hayek and Richard Nixon supported UBI, you should too. It's like they supported a different kind of UBI than people like Andrew Yang or the modern Democratic Party is coming towards supporting. Like the modern conception of UBI that people like Andrew Yang are proposing is a system that's placed on top of everything that already exists. Whereas the form of UBI that was supported by people like Friedrich Hayek and Richard Nixon was a kind that was supposed to be a replacement for all the welfare system that currently exists. Basically, you're supposed to get rid of food stamps and like food stamps, Social Security, welfare, all that kind of stuff. You're supposed to get rid of all of those programs and replace it with just a single check. The problem, however, is that there are too many powers that be that like those systems to exist. And so you have people like Andrew Yang and much of the Democratic Party that are moving towards supporting programs like UBI, who want UBI added on top of everything that it currently exists. And here's the thing, we can't really afford to do what we're doing now, much less add UBI on top of it. So you can't have the current slate of welfare programs and UBI at the same time. You have to pick one. Otherwise, you cannot financially sustain it. So, yeah, that's my UBI rant. Jacob Barrett, most underrated president. I think the most underrated president is probably Calvin Coolidge. I want to make a video about Coolidge sometime this year. But, yeah, Calvin Coolidge is the most underrated president, I think. He's not necessarily the best president, but I think he is the most underrated for what he actually did and what he was actually like. Mitch Connor, who would have won 1983 Warsaw Pact or NATO? NATO probably would have won. You know. The United States had a better nuclear arsenal, or at least it had a more spread out nuclear arsenal. Let's see. What do you think was the most cancerous AIDS moment in American political history? I think it varies. It's like, it depends on what you mean by a cancerous or AIDS moment in American political history. Like, what are you referring to as political history? I know that could be my shtick for knowing, because I do a lot of political history stuff, but I'm not entirely certain where you're drawing the lines of politics. Let's see, Britboy, why do people want to keep the welfare? People want to keep the welfare for numerous reasons. Some people think it's the morally right thing to do. Other people just think, it's easier to buy people off than to actually fix the problems that are keeping them there in the first place. There are lots of people have lots of reasons why. See, Timur Emerlenko, thanks for pronouncing Hayek correctly. Not all people can. Yeah, well, as an Austrian school fanboy, I've learned how to do that. Plus, I took German in high school, and also I've seen the rap battles between Keynes and Hayek video, and of course, you hear him tell how to properly pronounce his name, like high explosives. Alex Winter, let's do the stanky leg. No. What would be a realistic way to shrink the government? That is a really hard thing to do at this point, unfortunately. I would really like to do it, but you would really have to. I think to shrink the government nowadays would require a big change in the culture. You would have to have a big change in the culture of people wanting to take personal responsibility for themselves, but also taking responsibility for those immediately around them. It would take a big cultural change, and I don't think we have it in us at the moment. Let's see, Toronto Guy 81. What about reparations? Do you support them? The problem, it depends on reparations to what groups. Like, the problem with when people think of reparations, they're usually thinking about reparations to African Americans. But the problem with that is you're making people who did not own or oppress slaves pay money to other people who were never slaves themselves. And so that's politically and socially, that's just really hard to do. And it's going to make a lot of people just ornery. And I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Other people, like, say, reparations to people, like, say, to people who actually suffered at the hands of something, like with the, like, say, Japanese internment. You know, people have been more okay with reparations for people who were interned in the internment camps, Japanese people who were interned in internment camps during World War II, because they were people who actually suffered through it. The other difference, of course, is that slavery, although it was enforced by government, it was ultimately private, as in basically you're going to have the federal government pay for something that a bunch of private individuals did. That's the other that's the other tough part when it comes to things like reparations. And of course, how do you calculate? The biggest problem, how do you calculate what you're owed? How on earth do you calculate not only like the value of labor, but also just the sheer, how do you put a dollar amount on human freedom? And that's what makes reparations really hard to do. Alex Winter, are there certain mental illnesses that you think should prevent politicians from being in certain offices due to having it? No, I don't think there's any particular one. I don't think there's any mental illnesses that should legally prevent a politician. And I mean, now, if you as an individual don't want to vote for a politician who has a particular mental illness, that is perfectly within your prerogative to do so. Because the problem with trying to do that kind of thing, saying, oh, we're going to stop people. It's the same thing with trying to, like, pass laws saying, oh, we want to keep people with mental illnesses from buying guns. It's like, well, how are you defining the mental illness? Who's defining it? It's like, how do you choose which mental illnesses to make you disallow it, and who's defining what that mental illness is? And one of the issues is that, of course, is that definitions for mental illnesses change over time. Like, for example, autism there used to be a much stricter definition for what autism was. But back in the late 80s and early 90s, researchers and scientists and doctors changed the definition of autism to make it more broad. And so that's when we got the term, like the autism spectrum. Once upon a time, autism was just one thing, and then they broadened the definition and created a spectrum. Well, it just so happens that around the same time that doctors decided to, change the definition of what defines autism, that's also the time we saw a lot more people start getting vaccinated. And so this contributed to the whole anti-vaxxer thing, where people believe that, vaccines cause autism. Well, that kind of thing started around the same time that we started redefining autism to be more broad. And so we run into problems like that when you try to pass laws that say people with certain mental conditions don't get to have this right. So yeah, that's a challenge there. So yeah. All right. Okay. Looks like people are chatting in the chat there. Okay, let's see. Rocky, you seem to be in favor of immigration liberalization. How do you resolve that with Coolidge and Harding's immigration policy that basically shut the U.S. out of the rest of the world? Like I said before, Coolidge wasn't the best president, but I think he was the most underrated. It doesn't mean you have to support every single thing a person did. So, yeah, I'm in favor of liberalization, but that liberalization also has to come with certain other kinds of reform. Like there's an old Austrian School of Economics tenet, and that is you can't have open borders and a welfare state at the same time. And what's funny enough, though, is that the more ethnically or racially diverse a country is, the less supportive the people in that country tend to be of welfare programs. And so we see, like, in a lot of European countries that used to be very ethnically homogenous, over the last, 50 years since the end of World War II, they've become more ethnically and racially diverse. And over a big portion of that time, especially in like countries like Scandinavia, they have become suddenly less in favor of welfare states because they've become more ethnically diverse. And so it's one of those things I've heard some people argue that, well, we can culturally discourage greater, welfare states if we liberalize immigration. Of course, the problem then comes, well, are you going to get enough people to be in favor of that? It's really hard there. So yeah, I like Harding and Coolidge on economic policies. Well, on a lot of fiscal policies anyways. And even on foreign policy, they weren't too bad. Immigration policy, I probably wouldn't follow their lead on that. All right. All right, Jeff Sloat. Considering the genetic diversity of America, some people would be both owing people slavery reparations and being able to claim them. That is another complication for it. That's why reparations is... Serious talk about reparations has never been more than just like an intellectual or academic exercise. And Merlenko just came back from California. What area are you from? Central California, the place with all the almonds. Yeah, Quill and Ink history. I wouldn't say it's because we have become more ethnically diverse. Typing the reason right now. The reason is because the world has changed. Swedish industries don't have the favorable situation after World War II. That is also true. It is also true that it's harder to have a more robust, welfare state, or even to limit immigration just in a changing economic world. Yeah, it's the same reason the U.S. doesn't have the same economically dominant position either. The rest of the world finally caught up after World War II, destroyed them. Dr. Khan blog, what do you think of the idea that immigrants in the U.S. tend to be more in favor of welfare and even socialism? It's not a universal thing. You see, not all immigrants are exactly the same. It's like there's hung on the right, there's been this idea over the last decade or so that Democrats only want to let more immigrants in because they'll vote for Democrat because they tend to be poor and will want welfare programs. And there's some truth to that, but it's not entirely so. Like, look at the most recent election in the US and you find that Donald Trump performed better with minorities in that election than he did in 2016. Just think about that. It's like, not only that, but he did better with Latinos. And the reason for that is because Latinos, as it turns out, are not all the same. Depending on where in Latin America you're from, you have different values and ideas. Like, say, the Trump campaign reached out to Cuban, Venezuelan, Honduran, and Colombian immigrant communities in Florida. And as it turns out, they are not big fans of socialism. And there you had Bernie Sanders campaigning for it, praising people like Fidel Castro. So it turns out they're not all the same. Yep. So, yeah. Toronto Guy 81, how do you feel about Venezuela and other foreign interventionists? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. So yeah, Drawn of History is here. Just saying what's up and looking forward to the rest of your Holodomor series. Thank you, Drawn of History, Mr. Betts, everybody. Yes, I am hoping to get them out most likely in March because YouTube decided to wait so long to approve them for monetization. Yeah. All right. Built for Speed 101, greetings. Well, greetings to you too, Quill and Ink. The Social Democratic Party have become intellectually bankrupt and unable to provide solution to the current day problems like integration, crime, and gang violence. I can't speak to the internal politics of Scandinavian countries or even a lot of European countries, but I can imagine there is a frustration with a lot of the left and center left parties in Europe for a long time. It's like, fact of the matter is, it's like the dangerous thing about like certain like far right movements is that they address certain issues that the center and left parties don't want to address at all. Even if their solutions aren't really good or useful, the fact that they're addressing them at all convinces the people who are really concerned about them that they are the only ones who will do anything about it. Rocky, his Latino percentage is lower than Bush's. It's true, but it's up from both, McCain and Romney. It's like he's up from both McCain and Romney, so that's the thing we got to look at, I think, for trend lines anyways. See ya. Adasor 906, greetings from Romania. What's your opinion on America, A Narrative History by George Tyndall and David E. Shee? Is it a good introduction into American history? I'm afraid I can't answer that. I don't know. I do not know if that's a good book or not. I have not read it, so I can't give any. I can't give a very good one. I can't give a recommendation for it if I haven't read it. Let's see. Dr. Khan blog. I can understand Latin Americans and Asians not being a monolith and having less fidelity towards the Dems. So what do you make of African Americans on why they always vote Dem? Well, I'd say unlike Latin American and Asian immigrant communities who come from many different countries, there's more homogeneity within African American culture than there is with them. That's not to say that they are themselves a monolith. Obviously, they're all individuals who think differently. But I think you'll find more African Americans have similar experiences to each other than, say, a Mexican and a Honduran have with each other. I think they have different experiences. And because of that, they're going to have these different views. Whereas, say, an African American living in, say, Atlanta is going to have more similar experiences with an African American living in LA or New York. All right, let's see. Samuel Thompson, what do you think about the U.S. education system when it comes to history? I mean, as a history guy, I'm always going to say they don't teach enough history, and for the last few decades, they've been super focused and obsessed with the STEM fields because back in the 90s, this panic overtook the American culture that, America's falling behind the rest of the world. American students are falling behind the rest of the world in math and science. We're going to lose our place. When it turns out there was a lot of stuff that made that not really true. Like they're trying to say, these Japanese and Chinese students are outperforming American students. It's like, well, not really, or at least it's not as simple as that, because it turns out the grading systems in East Asia are different than in the US. Like in the US, a passing grade, like a C is 70% and higher. Whereas in like Japan, a passing grade is 50% and higher. And so in Japanese schools, the grading system is actually less stringent than in the US. There's also just the fact that it was also kind of a backlash to the growth of evangelicals in public, sort of the public attention evangelicals got back in the 1980s, under the Reagan years. And so people are thinking, these evangelicals are taking over the world. They're taking over America. They're going to dumb down our children and force them all to be young earth creationists or something. And so it was kind of a backlash to that. And also, of course, the Cold War is over and we're kind of afraid of losing our place on the top of the world. So, yeah. All right. See, Timur Imerlenko. Far East Asians have money culture. They work hard, earn a lot of money, and naturally don't want to share the fruits of their labor with those who didn't work as hard. Well, they're definitely a hardworking people. I'll give you that. It's like there's it's like the stereotype of Asian parents being super strict with their children, making them go into high earning careers. That stereotype didn't come from nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. Britboy, why do you oppose Medicare for All, and can you talk about the survey? Okay, so Medicare for All, the problem with it is that it doesn't really address the actual problem of why healthcare is expensive in the first place. There's a bunch of regulations in place and some market imperfections as well that prevent it from healthcare in a private sector being more affordable. And I think we should address those issues before we decide the government should just pay for everything. All right, I'm gonna answer a few more questions, and then I'll try to get to the survey stuff, because unfortunately I was supposed to be able to show you the survey on screen, but for some reason OBS isn't wanting to do that. So let me get a few more questions. Quill and Ink history. Curious, which one of your videos that you have uploaded do you feel most proud of looking back? Well, I guess it depends on in what ways. Like, in terms of research and production value, I think it would currently be like a part 1 of my Holodomor series. The one Conspiracy of Silence, Part 1. The thumbnail calls it Stalin's Holocaust. So, yeah, I think that one was really good. Of course, Part 2 of that series, I would say is, but that hasn't been published yet. Otherwise, I like the content I put up for the Holocaust denial video. Unfortunately, I am not too happy with the production values of the Holocaust denial video anymore. And so I've wanted to remake that one for a while, but it's not high on my priority list. All right, Alex Winter, what do you think of Michael Bloomberg and Bill de Blasio? It's like, they're New York politicians. They're both mayors of New York, former mayors of New York. Mayors of New York, for some reason, think they have the right to become president, even though I had to double check, but I'm fairly certain not a single mayor of New York has ever become president of the United States. It is like the worst place, because when you become mayor of New York, you receive just a crap ton of attention from the media. And so it's impossible to hide all your faults. So yeah. All right, Adasaur906, in your opinion, has the Pinochet government been a good or bad thing for Chile, economically speaking? Economically, I think it's been overall good, but socially, of course, it has been very, very mixed to bad. All the people sent to prisons, all the people killed, obviously. So it's not a clean picture. I think their economy is better than they would have continuing under the Allende regime, but obviously for people who lost their loved ones to all the prisons and secret killings, they would prefer to have their family back than a strong economy. All right, I'm going to take a break from those questions and let's start talking about the survey, since I cannot for the life of me get OBS to finally put it up. Let us start talking about it a little bit here. All right. So, for those of you who saw the survey, now the first question on there was, have you ever been to casualhistorian.com? Now, if you tried going to that website right now, I believe it would not work. There's been a lot of problems with it lately. And yeah, it's not working right now, unfortunately. I'm needing to talk to my guys about that. But yeah, so about 75% of the respondents, there's 144 respondents, and 141 people answered this question, and 75% of them have been to casualhistorian.com, and about the other 25% have not. Or no, sorry, no, it's the reverse. 75% have never been, and the other 25 have been, which shouldn't be surprising at all. I don't put much content on that website that isn't already available here. So yeah, that's not a surprise at all. But I have the website, just thought I'd find out. The second question was, do you follow Casual Historian or Grant Hurst on any of the following platforms? 142 responded to this question. About 19% said they follow me on Twitter at either Grant G. Hurst or at Casual Historian. About 2% say they follow on Facebook, and there's never been much reason to follow on Facebook, but recently I just started posting old videos to Facebook, as in actually uploading them to the Facebook player. I'm looking to use Facebook as a backup place just in case something goes wrong with YouTube. Diversify. 2.8% of people say they follow me on Instagram at either Grant G. Hurst or Casual Historian. And then, of course, the largest percentage of people don't follow me on any of those, which is about 80% of people don't follow on any, which is perfectly understandable and believable right there. That's completely normal. People don't usually follow you on multiple platforms unless they're like super fans or something. Let's see. All right, let's take another question for a moment from the chat. Rocky, best and worst parts of Trump presidency. Parts of Biden presidency you were looking forward to, and which parts are you dreading? Well, the best parts of the Trump presidency are the parts that Trump didn't really care about. Trump didn't care much about, like, picking judges or the tax cuts. He didn't really care much about those. And because of that, he farmed them out to other groups. He farmed judges out to the Federalist Society and Mitch McConnell, who got them through the Senate. And in the case of tax policy, he farmed that out to Paul Ryan and the congressional Republicans. But most of the stuff he tried to do on his own turned out to not be very good. Be it the wall, the tariffs, his just terrible luck at phone calls, and like his phone call with the president of Ukraine was recorded, and then he made that other stupid phone call with the Secretary of State of Georgia, and it's like, what are you doing? You got in trouble for stuff like this before, and you're doing it again. I mean, seriously. You are your own worst enemy, Mr. Trump. For Biden presidency, the best part of the Biden presidency is going to be the fact that I don't have to think about him every day. That's going to be the best part. All right. Alex Winter, if you could start a podcast with one U.S. president, one Roman emperor, and one type of fish, who would they be? Calvin Coolidge, Marcus Aurelius, and a catfish. There. All right, let's get back to the survey. All right. And so let's see. 1, 2. The third question in the survey was, what area of video making do you think I need the most improvement in? And 119 people responded. And the largest, of course, was on-screen performance. And I would probably agree with you guys. I need more practice of on-screen performing. Doing the live streams is for a little bit of that. But yeah, I need to improve on-screen performance. I could probably improve it if I wanted to spend more time filming. And that, I guess that's always the issue. Is you can always spend more time filming, but you only have so much time to do it. So you have to cut corners where you can. That was followed by audio issues. Also agree. Editing. Agree. Writing. That's the fourth. And then the least was filming. Yeah, so okay. That was question 3. Question 4 was about the types of videos you guys like to see. Do you prefer videos to be standalone videos, or do you prefer them to be part of a series? And about 60% prefer videos to be part of a series, or about 40% prefer them to be standalones. And I think that makes sense given the nature of the survey, because the issue with surveys is that they don't reflect the wider public, and they definitely aren't fully reflective of like the viewers of my channel. They are ultimately reflective of the people who answered the survey. And the people who are most likely to answer a survey, especially one like this, are like super fans, are super fans. And so this survey reflects sort of the core audience of my channel. And I think it makes sense that most of them would prefer videos that are part of series. Because like standalone videos are great for people who don't watch every single video, kind of like how episodic TV shows are great for more casual viewers. But if you're a hardcore viewer of a show, then you like them to be serialized. You like, because when a show is serialized, it rewards you for watching more. And that's what that's what like a video series does on YouTube. If you watch the whole series, you're more rewarded by it. And so that makes perfect sense to me. All right, to answer a few more questions from the chat. Let's see. Nusantara Rising. Have you seen Caspian Report's videos on Islamic science? What are your thoughts on its conclusions? I think I've seen some of his video on Islamic science, but I don't think I've seen all of it or the whole thing, and I can't remember if I did. So I'm going to have to watch it and give you conclusions at some later point. See, Brit Boy, your ideal result in Georgia. The ideal result in Georgia for me would be the Republicans to win both seats, just to extra guarantee that, Republicans maintain control of the Senate, but, Democrats get to control the White House. At best, nothing happens. Timur Emerlenko. So few people took the survey. Come on, man. Come on, men. Well, that's okay. That is okay. That's fine. All right, Gigi Green. Are you used to follow you on Twitter until they canceled me because they attacked Islam? Not entirely sure what you're saying there, but you're saying you used to follow me on Twitter until they canceled you. Not sure what you did. Islam is cringe, says Brit Boy. To each your own, I suppose. Quillen Inc. history. Trump would probably have won if Pence had changed the president's Twitter password. Yeah, that's the thing. Trump was his own worst enemy. He was his own worst enemy there, It's like, I'm reminded of that scene from like the 2016 season of South Park where they serialized that whole season and Mr. Garrison was Donald Trump. And he had to yell this at Hillary Clinton during one of the debates. Get out of your own way. Yeah, that's the feeling that I have about that. It's, get out of your own way, Miss Clinton. Get out of your own way. Oh boy. All right. All right, Timur, how does media intercept Trump's calls? What are security services paid for? Let's see, well, it's a thing called leaks, and they just kind of happen. They kind of happen a lot. Every president has them. Some people think Trump has had more than average, and I'd have to do the math on that, but I mean, like, during the Obama presidency, like, in his second term, like, they had the Snowden leaks, they had the stuff about the IRS targeting conservative groups, just a whole bunch of stuff. So, leaks are just kind of something that happen. Quillen Inc. history. Where do most of your views come from? Research recommended, the front page. Where do most of your views come from? Oh, okay. I think you're talking about where do most of my views on YouTube come from. Well, let's see. Well, if I pull up my analytics. Hello, analytics. let's see. Let's see. For my analytics, tell me search is where most of my traffic is coming from. About 50% of my views come from search. About 13% come from browse, so that's usually what you find on the home page. And another 13% comes from suggested videos. All right, Adasaur 906. What was the subject of your bachelor's thesis? The subject of my bachelor's thesis was actually the Christ myth theory. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't very good in terms of like actually writing an actual thesis statement because I wasn't very good at that at the time. And I didn't really know what I wanted to write about when I wrote my senior thesis. It was just mostly I wanted to research this subject and I had an opportunity to do it. Yeah, so all right. Let's get back to the survey. So the next question on the survey was, how long do you prefer videos to be? And this one also falls within the most likely understandable ranges. So the top, so about a little under 60% of people want videos to be between 10 to 20 minutes, which is what I usually make. And that's what YouTube tends to prefer, I think. So yeah, okay, so that's going along with more or less what I'm already doing. The second, 36%, want the videos to be 20 minutes or longer. As much as I would love to do this, I can't financially afford to do that. A 20 plus minute video every week would be just a nightmare. And then very small, about 6%, like 6.5% of people want videos to be under 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry. The YouTube algorithm doesn't like short videos, so I'm afraid you guys aren't getting what you want. All right, see, the next question is, what video topics would you like to cover in the future? And I think I'm going to skip over that one for now because those are both just listed out stuff. Come back to those later. The next question we're going to cover is, have you ever financially supported a creator on YouTube? So the reason for this question is I wanted to gauge like what kind of business strategy should I implement for the channel? Because it's like, okay, it's like if you have it's like, should you have a merch-based channel business? Should you have like what should be the financial basis? And so the top one, which is also just never surprising at all, is with about 57% of people say they either can't or don't want to support a YouTube channel financially at this time, which is understandable, especially given the age of like a big chunk of my audience. Like most of my audience, like 60 something percent, are like between the ages of like 18 and 34. The younger half of that are going to be people who don't have a job, people who are in college and so can't really afford to do that. And the other half are those who do and could. See, so about 57% say they either can't or don't want to support any channels right now. About 20%, so about a fifth of the people who answer the survey say that they have supported a channel or are supporting one on Patreon or Subscribestar. I never set up Subscribestar, but I know some people prefer it because they don't like the policies of Patreon and how they've treated people like Sargon of Akkad or others. See, about 6% say PayPal. They've donated on PayPal. About 8 or 9% say they've bought a product or service from one of the sponsors of a video. See, about another 6.5% say they've bought something through an Amazon affiliate link. About a little under 4% say they've either donated through Super Chat or had a YouTube membership. And then, of course, about 16% say they've bought merch. And so it looks like the smartest way for our channel to have the business at the moment is crowdfunding through like Patreon and then selling merch. So that's something to look for in the future. But now let's get to a few more questions in the live chat. So yeah, Jacob Barrett, how would you react if Trump somehow becomes president in the last few weeks? At this point, it would literally be a stolen election. He lost the election. There's no way he could possibly win without just complete rejection of like Democratic Republican norms. So yeah, I doubt it. I would say it really was I'd say the election was stolen. It was just stolen by him at this point. Jeff Sloat, are you from a Okie family or are you long-term California family? I am neither. So I am a first generation born in California. My mother was born in New York. My father was born in New Zealand. And they both of their families moved to California in the 60s. So I am neither of those. I am not a long-term California, nor am I an Okie family. Adasaur 906, what is the thing that grinds your gears the most as a historian? Poor history education, but that's the obvious easy thing to do. Yeah, it's still just poor history education. Alex Winter, do you think if someone were to go back in time and met Napoleon and say that he's a lot taller than they thought, Napoleon would cry because cartoons determined his future image more than he did? I'm pretty sure Napoleon was aware that people thought he was short, or at least foreigners thought he was short. I'm not sure how he would react to that, to be honest. Let's see. Quill and Ink History, what's the origins of your YouTube channel? Well, back in 2013, I formed my channel back in 2013, but it wasn't called Casual Historian back then. It was just called Grant Hurst. And I was inspired to make the channel through a couple different channels that I was watching. You know, it's like, it was Crash Course and CGP Grey were probably the biggest influences in me wanting to start a channel. And if you looked at my early videos, you would definitely see a lot of their influence, especially a lot of CGP Grey back in like 2015 and 2016. And Crash Course became a bigger influence sometime in like the latter half of 2017 as I started, you know, putting myself on camera rather than just having an animated stick figure there. And so, yeah, Casual Historian, however, in 2015, I started that as a blog back in 2015, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do with it, but, you know, I had registered the domain name Casual Historian on Hover, and it just fit. And then in 2018, I merged the two projects together. See, GG Green, you could make big videos and then share small clips daily, and that will be way better for your algorithm. Not exactly. Not exactly. Waiting along, because here's the thing. If you wanted to make the really big videos, you still have to make the really big videos and then clip them up. So you still have to take the time to make the big videos anyways. And most small videos don't get very many views. You'd have to be like a really big channel for small videos to get views. All right, let's go back to the survey here. So the next question we're going to be looking at is the one that said, how many books do you read a year? And so the largest group was at 58%. Read 10 or fewer books a year. which is probably in line with most of the US adult population. Like most adults in the United States, after they graduate from school, don't read very much, and they definitely don't read much for pleasure. And even those who have a job that requires them to read a lot will come home and not read when they get home because, they spent all day reading. So instead they'll come home, watch something on Netflix or Hulu, and that'll be it. And for them, that's fine. They're doing plenty of reading. It's just not personal reading for any kind of personal growth. And about 30% are people who read between 11 and 30 books a year, which is, I think, a good number, a good amount. And then there's about 12% there who read 30 plus books a year. And I'm not even sure if I do that, or at least the problem for me now is that I don't really read entire books very often anymore. I read a lot of books, but I don't read the whole thing. And that's because when I'm making videos, I'm usually taking a chapter here and a chapter there for different subjects. There are occasional exceptions to that, but usually I'm just taking parts of books and making videos out of them. But yeah, I remember back in 2014, I did a challenge for myself, and I made videos about it on this channel back then, but most of those videos are privated now, where I was basically challenged myself to read a book every week and then make a video review of it. I might make those videos public again at some point in the future. Maybe when I hit 100,000 subscribers, I'll make all those old videos public again. All right, the next question is, what's your level of education? And there's a tie in here between the two highest levels. About 37% say they have a bachelor's degree or higher. And another 37% say they have some college, so either an associate's degree or they haven't graduated yet. 15% say high school diploma, so I'm hoping they interpreted that as, I graduated high school, but I'm not in college. And then about just under 11% say that they are still in high school or younger, which is odd because, when I look at the demographics for my YouTube channel, when I look at the audience demographics for my YouTube channel and the ages of them, yeah, it's 3%, only 3.2% of my audience is under 18 years old, according to the YouTube analytics. And yet 10% of my respondents, basically 11% of the respondents, say that they're in high school. So when it comes to my high school aged viewers, you guys represent a disproportionately large percentage of the people who answered the survey, which I guess also makes kind of sense because you probably have more time on your hands than a older person would. All right. Let's see here. The next question. Would you visit a casual historian Discord? I've had people for a couple of years now asking me about setting up a Discord, and I only just late last year, I set up an account with Discord, and it's only because a business partner that was his preferred means of communication. And for the Discord question, 40% of respondents said that they might be interested that they might visit a casual historian Discord. 35% said no, they wouldn't, and only 23% said yes. So this is part of the reason why that there isn't a Discord for the Casual Historian channel. There just doesn't seem to be enough interest to make it worth my while, even amongst the hardcore fans here. Now, granted, if you add the maybe and yeses together, that's still the most, but it still doesn't seem like enough demand for it to be worth my while at this time. It's if I started a Discord, I would probably first open it up to patrons and channel memberships, if I ever set up channel memberships as an option for Casual Historian, and probably open it up to them first and experiment with it that way before opening up even wider. All right, let's get back. Let's answer a few more questions in the chat. All right, let's see here. Do 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 do. Talking about stuff. Let's see. Rocky, ever been anywhere outside of the U.S.? I haven't done much international travel. Back in, I think, early 96, I think, my family took a trip to New Zealand for a family reunion. So this was pre-Lord of the Rings, by the way, so that means, there wasn't any talk of Lord of the Rings stuff then. We went there before that was a thing, and plus I was like 5 at the time. So yeah, I unfortunately, they took me down to New Zealand when I was too young to appreciate it. But that's kind of how most family trips end up being. Let's see, Adasaur 906. Do you agree with Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance? I think too many people use the paradox of tolerance as an excuse to basically silence other people's speech. It's like the paradox of tolerance idea is, you can't, it's like if you're tolerant of intolerant views, then you're going to be fostering more intolerance. So therefore you have to be intolerant of intolerant views. I find that paradox is mostly used as an excuse to justify, like banning. It's mostly an excuse for hate speech laws and like hate speech restrictions, which I tend not to like because, of course, one person's hate speech is another person's, speaking truth to power and whatnot. And then, of course, there's also just general hate-filled speech, but I prefer, to counter bad speech with more better speech than to just silence them, because that doesn't make them go away. GG Green, can you make a video about the historicity of the Bible? I've kind of been doing that with my Jewish history series. I've kind of been doing that. I address historicity problems with different parts of I've been addressing historicity problems with different parts of the Hebrew Bible in my History of the Jewish Peoples series. So I'm kind of doing that. I just don't have a single video dedicated to the concept. I know, from my understanding, I think Religion for Breakfast is working on a series of videos, or he wants to work on a series of videos about biblical archaeology, and that might be something interesting for you to check out if that's what you're interested in. But yeah, my Jewish history series is at least partially addressing the historicity issue. See ya. Timur Emerlenko, or people lie about their age on YouTube to avoid age restrictions. That's true, that happens. I remember when YouTube was first, started back in 2005, I lied about my age on my very first account. I don't have access to that account anymore, or most of the ones created before like 2010 or something. All right, see. Adasaur 906, can you recommend a good primer on the history of philosophy and or political ideologies? Well, it depends on what kind you're thinking of. On the history of philosophy in general, I don't think I can, but for political ideologies, there's one I might. Hold on. So you might not be able to see this, but the book I pulled off was called The Great Debate. It's called The Great Debate, Edmund Burke, Thomas Paine, and the Birth of Right and Left by Yuval Levin. Yuval Levin is a frequent writer for National Review, but this book is actually still very good, whether or not you like National Review or whatnot. The Great Debate is still actually a pretty good history about like sort of right and left and the origins of political ideology in the English-speaking world. And he traces this through the people, Thomas Paine and well, Edmund Burke. You know, two people often seen as sort of the origins of right and left in English-speaking politics. So I would recommend that book if you're interested more in that kind of stuff. All right, let's get back to the questions and the survey. All right, this next question I asked you guys, are you religious? Mark the closest to your own. And so the biggest of these categories was people who identify themselves as not religious. So not religious, about 33.8%. So about 34% of people identify as not being religious, you know, as either atheist or agnostic, which is surprisingly large considering how much talk I do about religion, but I don't know. See, about the second largest seems to be Roman Catholic at about 15% of respondents were Roman Catholic. Let's see, about 10.6% were some other religion that I didn't mention because there's just too many religions to try and write down. About 10% were Muslim. I was kind of surprised about that. About 7% were other Christians, so, you know, they weren't Protestant, Catholic, or Orthodox. Let's see, about 6.3% were just Christian / non-denominational, aka lying Baptist. That's a Lutheran joke there. About another 6.3% identified as mainline Protestant or liberal Christianity. See, and 4.2% identified as evangelical Protestants. Another 4.2% identify as Greek Orthodox. 1.4% identified as Hindu. See, about less than 1%, 0.7% identify as Buddhist. And another 0.7% identified as Mormon. So that was kind of interesting, the breakdown. I was kind of surprised that not religious was the largest. But then again, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that not religious was the single largest category. I'm not surprised by that so much as I'm surprised by the sheer percentage they made up of it. You know, like a third of the audience isn't religious, considering how much religious content I tend to make. All right, see, there's a leaf blower blowing outside my window. Do you guys hear that, or is it just me? Let's see. All right. So the next question, if you have taken the political compass test, which quadrant did you fall into? All right, so if you have taken the political compass test, which quadrant did you fall into? Either most recent or most consistent result if taken more than once. All right, and so the largest single category for people answering this question was identifying as libertarian left. And I can only imagine this is the case because, like, I am a conservative, but I also say bad things about Trump. So I guess that gets me makes me friendly with the libertarian left. I don't like the far right or Trump. See, that's about like 29% are libertarian left. About 27.5% are libertarian right. I thought that would have been a greater percentage, but it's not. 25.4% have not taken the test at all. It's like, what's with you people? About 12.7% say, identify as authoritarian right, according to that political compass test. And then the smallest percentage is authoritarian left. That part is not surprising at all. The authoritarian left, yeah, like oh gosh, like how many months ago was it now, where a bunch of you in the chat bullied some tanky out of the chat who was spreading Holodomor denial? All right, let's see here. All right, let's get back to the chat for a moment. All right, Rocky asks, can you talk about the relation between prohibition and income taxes? Heard about it in an oversimplified video. Okay, well, okay, so one of the arguments for ending prohibition was excise taxes. So, for those who might not know, there are different types of taxes out there, and excise taxes are basically taxes on certain kinds of specific goods. Like, sometimes they're also referred to as sin taxes. So, you know, like a tax on alcohol, a tax on tobacco, a tax on different kinds of things, you know. And they tend to do a couple of things. They tend to be very good revenue generators. However, they also tend to be quite regressive taxes as well, because most people who drink a lot and, you know, probably smoke are poor people. But anyways, one of the things this has to do with prohibition was that after prohibition was lifted, was lifted in 1933, was that the federal government could now make a bunch of money through excise taxes on alcohol. And I would have to watch that oversimplified video to understand what you're meaning about a relationship between the two. Because there's a relationship between prohibition and like excise taxes. Adasaur 906. A more casual question, beer or wine? I don't drink. It might make me a bad Lutheran, but I am not much of a partaker in alcohol. I've never liked the taste, and I worked at a bar for like 7 years cleaning up after drunk people. I've earned the right to not drink. So, yeah, I'm not a drinker. Jacob Barrett, will we see another awakening? God showed me in a night vision. If you're thinking about another great awakening, we could, but I don't know what that great awakening would look like. Plus, historians aren't even in real agreement on how many great awakenings there have been. Canos boy, the most important question you will ever get here. Broadleaf forest or needle leaf trees? Broadleaf forest or needle leaf trees? I like leaves. I'd say a broadleaf forest I'd prefer. But needle leaf smells nicer, but I like the aesthetic, the look of broadleafs more, but the smell of like pine needles is nicer than that. All right, now let's go back to one of the questions I skipped earlier, one of the open answer questions. What video topics would you like me to cover in the future? So let's see here. A lot of people put a lot of answers in single questions. I would prefer just a single answer, but all right, this provides me with a lot of material. Let's see, Christian ecumenism. One person put Christian ecumenism, American intervention in Latin America, debunking secular myths about religion, history of Turkey's denial of the Armenian genocide, and types of Protestant churches around the world. I'm not opposed to any of those. I just don't know how I would make specific things about any one of them. Though I think a history of Turkey's denial of the Armenian genocide probably falls up my alley, most because I've done that a couple times already, or at least done videos like that a couple times. See, another respondent just wants me to do more political history. Another says, anti-conspiracy theories, reviewing scandals and or major stories and comparing what the news coverage at the time said to how scholars, historians write about them later with more information. That sounds like something Cypher does, like especially whenever he does one of his based on a true story videos. See, someone wants me to cover the progressive era constitutional amendments. That would be 1617. Basically like the 16th through 20th amendments, I think, at the top of my head. All right, some people want me to cover more modern history and debunk poorly written pseudo-history books, movies, etc., and weird historical topics. All right, Mayan culture and history. I don't see myself doing Mayan culture and history, most because I just don't have that much interest in that part of history. See, theories, someone said theories of the ancient world, and I'm not sure entirely what you meant. Now, another person, impact of trains on modern American towns. Funny story about that. The town I live in, which is in Central California, is known as a railroad town. You see, railroad towns are towns that were built specifically for the existence of the railroad. As in, the railroad companies were going through and planning out places where they were going to, planning out where they were going to build their railroad. And then people came around and built towns based around where the railroad junctions were going to be. And my town happens to be one of them. And so, in this part of the country, a lot of the railroads function the same way rivers did throughout, like, ancient civilization, where people, like, most ancient civilizations built their, like, civilizations, they started their civilizations around, like, moving waterways. And so, usually along rivers was a major place to start a civilization. Well, out west in the United States, the same thing happened, but with railroads. And so my town is one of those railroad junctions. Let's see, another person, the Antonescu paradox, not sure what that is, communism with Chinese characteristics, Ho Chi Minh communism, African communism, Eastern Europe, obscure administrative occupied territories, such as Transnistria Governorate. Okay, I can look at some of that stuff. See, myths on conservatism. That's something I announced this in the in a community tab post. I announced that sometime in 2021 I'm going to start a series on the history of the American right. And so myths on conservatism will probably be something that gets engulfed into that series whenever I get around to starting it. Early modern Europe, that'll be covered as I cover other topics probably. Non-European Christian saints, very specific. I'll see if I can get around to that. See, the history of Afghanistan, maybe. There are other channels that I know are covering Afghan history, like Al-Muqaddimah touches on it occasionally, as well as Hikmah history as well. Post-World War II politics. That'll probably be covered also in the history on the American right. And one person had a bunch also, lesser-known events in antebellum America. History of how history was recorded and taught. So that's basically just historiography. Pre-Columbian North America, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, pre-Sengoku Japan, a general history of Madagascar and or Laos, and the Baha'i origins and beliefs. Wow, a very diverse range of stuff this guy wants me to cover. Histories of Central Asian states along the Silk Road. I like demographic histories as another person. Lesser known empires like Khazaria and Christian history. And, well, as for Christian history, I've I think I also announced this last year on the community tab that I will be making sometime this year. I will start a history of Christianity series. I'm going to see if I can start it as close to Easter as I can, but I can't guarantee results there. Let's see. Someone wants me to do stuff on American cults. Let's see, modern politics again. The 100 Years' War, World War II, American history or ancient history. Jews, already doing that. Early Christianity, planning on doing that. Islam, already doing that. See, more history of theology stuff. Maybe try some Southeast Asia stuff and a bit more politics. Otherwise, keep up the good work. Well, thank you, and I will see what I can do. Space program, the Apollo program, and Skylab. Yeah, I'm not much of a history of science guy, unfortunately. And it's surprising amount of repeat of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've got a lot of potential ideas here. All right, let's look back to the chat again. Let's see, Adasaur 906. Do you think that Islam would have had a reformation if the Mu'tazila school remained relevant? Ooh, I'm gonna have to re-familiar myself with the Mu'tazila school to fully grasp the question. There's ideas that would Islam have a reformation? And the implication for people thinking, an Islamic reformation is that, Islam will become more peaceful and mellow out like what happened with Christianity. The problem, however, is that most people tend to forget is that the Reformation itself was actually very violent. The Protestant Reformation was a very violent affair. And so one could argue that the Islamic world might be in the midst of a reformation right now. And the problem is that reformations tend to be very violent, especially if the religious institutions that are being reformed have a very strong role in the political stability of that society. See, Jacob Barrett. Would you review and analyze Trump's presidential memoir after he leaves office? I've been thinking about doing that for the Obama memoir. The problem with the Trump memoir is that Donald Trump is going to have a really hard time getting it published. Because opponents of President Trump, rightly or wrongly, whether or not you agree with their reasons for wanting to do it, have been targeting anyone who works with the president. Like, back when he was trying to file all these different lawsuits, you had groups like the Lincoln Project doxing lawyers who were working with the Trump campaign for these lawsuits. Which is not a good thing. We don't want doxing of lawyers to become a normal thing. And if a lawyer can get doxed for, helping a presidential campaign file a lawsuit, what'll happen to like a publishing company? And so I'm not entirely certain if President Trump will ever get to publish a memoir. And if he does, it's definitely going to be a ghostwritten one because Trump does not have the patience to write, similar to how he didn't write The Art of the Deal. Alex Winter. Is it important to believe in yourself? Yes and no. Believe in yourself too much and, it's kind of a hubris thing. Don't believe in yourself at all and you end up not moving it forward in life. See, Rocky, thoughts on monetary and fiscal policies of the ancient Romans? The Romans didn't really have fiscal policy. They minted coins and didn't know why prices went up when they minted a lot of coins. That's kind of the problem what happened under Diocletian. Diocletian minted just a shit ton of coins. and then caused inflation in the empire, and that was before they knew about what inflation was. Timur Emerlenko. Great what if idea. The video about Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and attempt to create a triune Polish-Lithuanian-Ruthenian Commonwealth. Maybe someone could do that. I don't know if that would be a good one for me. I'm not super... Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is not my forte. It's mostly like a joke. It's like, oh, hey, look, Poland. It's an idea, not a country. Felipe Garcia. Do you want to cover the denial movement of the Armenian genocide? I can see myself doing that. I don't know when. And the fact that other people, there are already videos in existence that cover it already, make me less likely to cover it myself. Like, I think Knowing Better has a video on it, and so I'd say until I get mine out, you can go ahead and watch his. See, Adasaur 906, out of all the pseudo-histories, which ones do you hate the most? The one I hate the most are probably the ones associated with, like, the Black Hebrew Israelites. It's not even because I have a strong distaste for them. It's been just personally annoying because I get so much attention from them. And I was getting attention from the Black Hebrew Israelites before I made my 90-minute video about them in 2019. So, yeah, it's like they're the most annoying, most because they've just been most annoying to me personally. All right. Let's get back to the survey. Let's see how long we've been going on now for. I can't even see. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Almost 2 hours, huh? All right, then. All right, so the next question here is, what's your favorite YouTube channel excluding Casual Historian? All right, so let's see what you guys like here. Alternate History Hub. Yep, saw that a number of times. Kraut. Yeah, it's the Alternate History Hub. Kraut. Historia Civilis. J.J. McCullough. Cynical Historian. World War II. I'm assuming that's the Indy Nidell channel. Overly Sarcastic Productions. History Guy. Trey the Explainer. Geography Now. Another for J.J. McCullough. MKBHD. Internet Historian. Oh gosh. I almost had a chance to meet Internet Historian at like the last VidCon in 2019. But yeah, it's like nearly had a chance to meet him. I think like him and Emperor Lemon were gonna hang out with like Cody of Alternate History Hub, but I think he ditched us at one point. Cody ditched the rest of us to go hang out with them, I think. So yeah, The Great War. Yep. Funny thing, I actually like the current cast and the current way the Great War channel operates than I did when Indy Nidell was the leading face of it. I find the current operations of the Great War I find to be, I think, better than it was under Indy. Let's see, when somebody put a COD Daily, Emperor Tiger Star, The Angry Joe Show, The Oriental Institute, Time Ghost, that's another Indy Nidell one, I think. Caspian Report, Kraut and Top Tens. Some Ordinary Gamers, The Yankee Marshal, Kings and Generals Until They Bent the Knee to the Woke Gods, Epic History TV, The History Guy, History Deserves to Be Remembered, and maybe SciShow or Dr. Becky. NWA, Daily Wire, Jim Cornette, John Doyle, Red Letter Media, Hannah and Jake or Game Grumps. You got some more Kings and Generals. The History Guy, History Deserves to Be Remembered, and Mark Felton Productions. Sam Arano, See, never met Sam Arno, but I've talked with him in Slack. He contributed some voice work for part 3 of the Holodomor series, and so that'll be coming out in like March. See, terrible writing advice. DW Terminator. Thursites the Historian and Massa Man. Super Paul Games. Mr. Beat Joe Rogan. Hikmah History. Techmoan. Retro Man Cave Chase the Heart. Mueller, another cynical historian. Tick, History Matters, cynical historian again. Geo Now, Massa Man, History Matters. Sorted Food and Kurzgesagt. Bo the Fifth Column. Let's see. Indy Nidell and Spartacus Olsen. Okay, yeah, those guys. History Guy, similar type of videos. Cynical Historian, Star Talk and Pro Jared. Paul Joseph Watson. There's one of those in here. Niga Higa, Cogito, Massa Man again, What If All Hist, Al Mukaddima, Kings and Generals, Cool History Bros, Hello Future Me, and the Cynical Historian once more. Yeah, it's you guys are basically listing a bunch of people I know or already watch. Extra credit, Jackson Crawford, never heard of him. Kings and Generals, Ancient History, Epimetheus, okay, I know him. Ryan Reeves, yep. Oversimplified, Daniel Green. I think Daniel Green's a BookTube guy. I think that's what he is. Overly Sarcastic again. Stalingrad Front. Is there a YouTube channel just called Stalingrad Front? Huh. H3H3 and Joe Rogan. All right. Scholagrim, Simple History. Doval Hottie, never heard of him. TFL Truck, never heard of that. The Great War, Kings and Generals. Alternate History Hub, Mr. Beat, Emperor Tiger Star, Emperor Civilis. I've met half of them in person. China Uncensored. Oversimplified. CGP Grey, there's one. Kings and Generals again. Tom Scott, History with Hibbert. History with Hibbert. Time Ghost, Oversimplified. The History Guy, Reason TV, Knowing Better. Okay. X22 Report. Ugh. Kings and Generals, History Matters. History with Sai, Al Mukaddima, Stephen Milo, History Time and Study of Antiquity in the Middle Ages. Okay, guys, you could just stop listing the history slack. Hikmah History, Al Mukaddima, Caspian Report. Kraut, Economics Explained, Crash Course, Kings and Generals, Jack's Films, very nice. And I love many YouTube channels, says this person. Some of them are half as interesting, Real Life Lore, and Mr. Beat. Fantastic. All right, let's get back to the chat for a moment. Oh, all right. Let's see, Poland is quote, Poland is an idea, not a country. Angry Poles. Oh boy. See, Alex Winter. How good was JJ's video on how Christians became Republicans? I'd say that's not exactly the right way to describe it. It's how evangelicals became Republicans. And there was a time, it's funny because there was a time when evangelicals were just starting to become politically active again back in the 70s. And there was actually a moment where they could have gone and become like Democrats. And that usually came with Jimmy Carter. So like if Jimmy Carter had been more successful in the White House, evangelicals could have either been equally split between the two parties or actually lean Democrat. So, if you want to blame, why evangelicals are all Republicans, you really need to blame Jimmy Carter. But yeah, I think it's still a really good video. I just think it's kind of I think it's just sort of missing something. It's like it's sort of missing a personal connection to the subject, I think. Because I don't think J.J. McCullough nor Mark Henry, Religion for Breakfast, are very personally familiar with evangelical Christianity, I think. And so I think that's kind of what was missing. See, Rocky, if you had the chance, what part of the U.S. Constitution would you remove? I would either remove the Interstate Commerce Clause or the popular election of senators. You know, that's the 17th Amendment, I think. Yes, I think 17th Amendment is popular election of senators. So I'd either get rid of the Interstate Commerce Clause or the 17th Amendment. Let's see. Jason Califor. I laughed when someone replied, Jim Cornette was their favorite. Are you a wrestling fan? I am not. And there's something I'm sort of curious about. So you know, it's like I grew up in the 90s when like in the 90s and 2000s, I remember wrestling wasn't something you were supposed to admit that you watched. It's like if you were the only exposure I ever had to like pro wrestling when I was growing up was like you'd go to a poor person's house, like if you had a poor friend and if you went to a poor friend's house, their family was most likely the ones that watched pro wrestling. It's like the poor friend or like the kid who lives with his divorced dad. Those were the kids who watched professional wrestling. And it wasn't something, you know, people praised back in the day. And so I never got into pro wrestling. And then suddenly, like in the last few years, suddenly like it's this thing that's cool and popular to talk about. And I'm like, since when? This stuff was like a joke my entire life, and then suddenly everyone's talking about it. I don't get it. Let's see, Adasor 906. How much did Milton Friedman actually influence the economic policies of the Reagan administration? Not as much as you would think. You know, it's like the Reagan administration used a lot of like Austrian or Chicago school rhetoric, but they didn't do too much in terms of actual policy. So that's the kind of thing. It's like that's what I think a lot of people confuse, like certain policy versus rhetoric. Because like when people think, oh, America's politics have gone so far to the right since the 1980s, it's like, not really. We've mostly seen a rightward move in terms of rhetoric, but in terms of actual policy, we haven't really seen much. We haven't seen too much change in terms of actual policy. You know, like Republicans are still talking about tax cuts. And it's like 30 years later, or like 40 years later, they're still talking about tax cuts as like the most important thing that they ever try to do. So, yeah. All right, there's one last question in the survey we're going to go over. This is, if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, or you are currently in college, what is your major? And when I send out the next like audience survey sometime next fall, I'm going to probably be a little more try to rephrase this question in such a way that I don't have to look at open submissions and rather I can look at a chart. So let's see here. We got 90 responses to this one. Let's see. Someone said history, chemistry, mathematics, physics, mechanical engineering, computer science, a medical degree, economics, business, history again, law, engineering, business operation. That might just be, you might be able to lump that in as business, arts and humanities, hospitality, civil engineering, microbiology, political science, history and business. So a dual major there. Political science, information technology, sport management, but I was one elective away from a history minor. Someone says they haven't graduated yet. So, yeah, okay. Archive science, currently looking to attend seminary. Oh, interesting. Biochemist, mechanical engineering again, business administration and MBA, political science. See, master divinity and bachelor's in religious studies, I attended trade school for 4 years for 2 different fields of study. I am also studying electrical theory and work in my field. Nice. See a BS in economics, bioscience, information and library science, resource management. Okay, somebody wrote something in Spanish. Religious studies, archival science, Bachelor of Arts in History, and Master of Science in Information Science. Animal medicine, I have a major in biology and a minor in philosophy. Nice. History and philosophy, medieval studies and religious studies. Origin of conflicts, I'm not sure if that's a major, but okay. Now, someone studying world languages. Someone got an MBA in finance and another business. And more business. Sociology. Aerospace engineering. Chemical engineering. Architecture. Geography and Protestant theology. That's a mix. Aviation, engineering, evolutionary biology, social sciences, mathematics, elementary school education, computer engineering, commerce and agricultural tech, computer science, accounting and finance, history and library science, and theology. That's a surprising mix. That is a surprising mix. A surprising amount of STEM fields in there that I wasn't expecting. All right. We are now just past 2 hours, so I think I'm going to take a few more questions from the chat. So if you have a question, let it up in the chat right now, so that way I can answer it, and then we can be done for this day. All right. So this first question from Rocky: best and worst recent president, FDR to Trump, from your perspective on interventionism. Eisenhower was pretty good when it came to being restrained, or at least he was restrained when it came to direct military involvement, but he was also supportive of, like covert operations. Like he's the one who ended up approving the overthrow of the Shah in Iran, the overthrow of Mossadegh in Iran. Let's see. And Reagan was pretty similar to Eisenhower in that regard. See, it's like the fact that you chose FDR to now is makes it a little harder for me to pick something I really like. Let's see. I'd say Bush Sr., Bush the Elder was pretty good. He was pretty restrained. It was like, especially with going into Iraq, just go in and get out, get the job done and leave. You gotta like that. Alex Winter, what is your favorite lesser-known ancient religion? Depends on lesser-known. Oh, God. Is Zoroastrianism a lesser-known religion? I don't know if I would describe... That's the problem, I guess. Lesser-known ancient religion. I don't know if Zoroastrianism would be considered a lesser-known ancient religion. Also, just the fact that it currently exists. See, any more questions here? I think there's a little bit of latency, so it takes a minute for you guys to hear the question. Let's see, anything else I can do while I'm waiting? Let's see. All right, I think I'll take this one last question from Adasaur906. What is, in your experience, the history book that you've struggled the most in grasping its content, but was fulfilling in the end? The history book I've had the hardest time grasping. I'm not entirely sure. I'm looking at my bookshelf over here and I'm trying to think, what book do I have that may have fit that? But I'm not entirely sure, honestly. Had to get back to you on that. And Rocky put one more quick question, so I guess I'll do that. What genre of fiction do you like? when I read fiction, I tend to go for like fantasy. So, you know, I'm a big Tolkien fan. So, I think that about does it. Thank you guys for coming to the live stream. I wish OBS had been working and I could have shown you the survey as I was going through it. Would have been a little more interesting on your end. So, apologize for that. I'll try to get that fixed out for next time. And so, the next live stream will be the first Tuesday of February, which will be February 2nd. So, February 2nd will be the next live stream. I'll probably set that one up when we get a little closer to that day. So, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Ending stream.